Well, hello, friends and clients. I'm Jake Mazzone, of course, investment advisor and director of retirement portfolio management. I formed a small investment management company after the stock market crash of 2008 and 2009. One of my main goals is to provide existing and new clients with alternatives to traditional stock and bond investments while protecting them from a potential bank failure and account losses. With this YouTube broadcast, I'm committing to my personal goal of providing free advice to clients and friends about surviving bad economic cycles, retiring richer, and taking key investment advantages during specific geopolitical developments. This video is an update to the video I produced about 3 months ago entitled Stock and Economic Crash of 2015 and contains new and accurate inserted data in key areas. Although most of what I discuss pertains to existing clients, my advice will also apply to prospective clients that may eventually want to take advantage of the unique combination of services and advice that I offer, particularly the advice that I offer in managing retirement accounts. So my hope is to enrich the life of any viewer, regardless of a relationship we may or may not have. I've designed this video as a way of gently warning my valued clients of many years. Although I've been licensed as a financial professional since 2004, I'm further qualified to speak on this subject because I have a master's degree in business administration, a Bachelor of Science degree in finance. I've also completed all the necessary curriculum for a certified financial planner, and lastly, I'm certified by the American College as an estate planning consultant. As a disclaimer, I must admonish you that some of what I discuss today may be disturbing if you're not my client, and also anyone that has been lulled into a state of comfort through years of slow growing wealth or an otherwise smooth or even rich lifestyle. As the tension grows in the presentation, if you are a client of retirement portfolio management, you can rest assured that any investments that I manage are designed to withstand a very serious stock market crash with only a mild to moderate impact. These holdings or securities provide clients with a quick recovery back to break even, and this is partly due to having only an indirect correlation to stock indices such as the S&P 500. Can you guys do me a favor, move those mics back a little bit? Oh, today what we will be covering is what is happening with the economy right now and how I think we are teetering on the brink of a very severe market crash. Later in the presentation, I will reveal a shocking prediction of how I feel the economy will drastically change in late 2015 and how that change will begin its reversal before the end of 2014. Listen carefully to my comments after the section entitled Crash Final Phase, because it is there that I will review the steps I take in this economic climate before buying investments for clients. There has never been a comprehensive presentation of these economic crash predictions published in print or video, and there are many hours that went into the preparation of this video for you. So I hope to hear from you after you have digested this important information. If you're not a client and grateful for a presentation that may possibly save you or your family from bankruptcy, I'll put my phone number up now and at the end of this video. It's very possible that you'll find that I'm your best choice as a financial counselor over your retirement savings, IRA accounts, 403B, or even 401k. If you're a financial news commentator or an old school stockbroker, you may want to turn this video off now because you might get offended that much of what I discuss is in total opposition to what you believe to be true or to what you tell viewers or clients. Lastly, I must share with you that the advice I give in this presentation is in no way a green light for you to buy, sell, or change your investment accounts without directly speaking to a licensed professional like myself. My hope for those of you that are not my clients is that as you begin to understand each of the factors presented, it will prompt you to contact me so that we can start planning to heal your retirement accounts that are improperly invested and exposed to the risk that I'm about to discuss. If you're one of those people that say, "I'm good, I don't need your help, Jake," or feel that the US economy is too strong to ever fail, well, I empathize with you and felt the same way leading into the big 50% crash of 2008. After that, I came to understand that anything can happen, and when markets start to crash, there is nowhere to hide. Therefore, you really need to carefully review the later section of this video and listen for several reasons why the fall may have already started, and undoubtedly you'll conclude that a phone call to me is past due. Keep in mind that the elements of a prospering economy are full employment, low inflation, including a slightly weak US dollar, also slowly rising interest rates and real estate values, high levels of consumer confidence, moderate consumer savings, and low levels of consumer and corporate debt spending. Couple that with a slow reduction in government spending or deficit spending, and equality in foreign trade, that is, few trade imbalances where the U.S. imports equivalent goods compared to what they export, and you mix this economic stew up with other factors such as productivity improvements in corporate manufacturing and technology advancements in shipping. Well, and then you have a fairly decent U.S. economy. Now, this leads to better earnings and wage increases, which leads to an increase in consumer confidence, increased corporate and consumer spending, which leads to housing values going up and the stock market value going up. And that leads to hiring and full employment. Now, as a reality check from that list, what we currently have is a slightly better consumer confidence level since 2009, and housing and stock market increases, but only through artificially induced recovery. This is called quantitative easing or money printing. And we also have moderate hiring. The unemployment level right now is about 6.2%, and that's better than the 10% that we had in 2009. What we are still lacking is an unemployment level below 6.1%. We also have dismal corporate spending. Incidentally, corporate treasuries sit on record levels of cash, and they've continued to do so since about 2010. We also have a housing market that is starting to sputter. In a robust economy, corporate America is expanding with new plant and manufacturing facilities, new research and development, and even making changes in technical and manufacturing productivity. What we also lack is consumer spending, which remains low in an area that is very important, which is large asset purchases. Millennials, or the 35 and under crowd, are starting to refuse to buy houses. In my opinion, not a healthy but rather fragile economic recovery. Almost anything can trigger a stock or real estate crash again. It can even come from a slight increase in lending rates, or what's going on in China, or the Israeli-Hamas conflict, or also ISIL, or the ISIL problem going on in Syria and Iraq right now. The economic fragility has been enhanced by quantitative easing, money printing, or government bond buying. All mean about the same thing. These are monetary policies that weaken the US dollar's value and eventually create inflation. Right now, we have a shockingly long run of strength in the US dollar, and that's mostly due to folks divesting from stocks and foreign investments. But most experts say this will soon come to an end because it is having a strong impact on the profits of multinational corporations. This will in turn cause those economies to drop sharply. Now, I will always share with you that the unemployment numbers reported are far from correct and have been distorted for many years. The percentages reported currently include current filers only, but there is no accounting for discouraged workers that have given up looking. It doesn't also account for those that have ran out of benefits. It also doesn't include the underemployed. For example, those that have gone from a $70,000 a year job to a $35,000 a year job. Incidentally, most new jobs in the recovery are underemployed spots that have been filled. Many are people that were forced to switch from full to part-time. Some say we've become a nation of burger flippers. I estimate the actual true national unemployment rate right now is 15 to 16% and not the 6.2% recently touted by the media. Viewers must understand that the current economic recovery is 100% fake. Yes, I said that. While many people may claim we're better off since 2008, the reality is that this recovery has not been driven by permanent increases in productivity or true corporate earnings like it should be, but instead by artificial temporary government stimulus programs, first and foremost money printing, but secondly, trillions of dollars of loan stimulus. To understand just how closely correlated the stock market rise and money printing has been over the past few years, look at a comparison between the growth in the monetary base, which is cash in circulation, and the growth of the S&P 500. You can check that out on any website from 2009 to present. They almost mimic each other. Printing more money via our Federal Reserve to buy our own treasury bonds instead of real investors buying them is the catalyst for this fake recovery. I wish I could say it differently and that we are truly recovered from the Great Recession, but we are not. Sadly, the media seems to have announced this blatant lie since 2010. Now, while many people seem to cheer every little possible sign of growth in the economy and ignore or downplay the negative news, what's really astonishing is how little growth in the economy we've seen in spite of all the government intervention. If the recovery was real, why are stock prices growing faster than corporate earnings? This is also evidenced by an abnormally high price-to-earnings ratio of most stock investments available right now. A big reason for the stock market's record numbers recently is investors' outlandish expectation of future earnings. It's all smoke and mirrors without real contracts and productivity to back it up. Much of the corporate earnings improvements we've seen since 2009 are because many middle management jobs were eliminated during the recession and few of those staffers were replaced. The earnings growth we do see is actually poor. S&P 500 revenues grew only 1 to 2% for most of 2013 and about the same this year. This is no surprise given the US GDP growth was only 2% for 2013. Despite this, the market is apparently expecting an enormous jump in revenues. It's this confused expectation and its associated media hype that have driven stock prices thus far in 2014, which is lately, as late as September of this year, starting to show a trend reversal. As in 1929, one would have thought that the market would reverse trend sooner under such weak gross domestic product announcements, but instead it has soared to record highs. People back then in 1929, and of course right now, had become inclined to think that prosperity was a God-given right rather than something that they had to earn through hard work. Why not think that way? I mean, for much of the 1920s and of course since 2010, everyone was getting rich in the stock market. Conveniently, all market economists at the time and now shout out to everyone, buy, buy, buy. This is exactly the distorted reality and a perfect setup for a revisiting of a disaster that threw our economy into an 11-year-long depression. Before the big crash of 1929, the stock market rose fantastically even when the economy sputtered. Think of what's happened from 2013 until July of this year. Still, the financial news networks continue to delude the average investor into thinking all is well while promoting the latest 5 hot stock picks that will bring you a supposed windfall. Okay, let's get down to business. We're talking about phase 1 of the new Great Depression right now. I'm going to give you a few of my educated predictions about the next 10 to 11 years, but I want you to know that this is not to scare you, but rather to help you see how much this makes sense and how you can protect yourself and your family from its implications, particularly by following my advice. This is how I see things coming to a head very soon, and I'd like to be clear that this phase and all phases I'm about to discuss are worldwide occurrences. A quasi-depression will begin in early to mid-2015. The first phase lasts 3 years and is characterized by the following: a 25 to 30% crash in all stock markets and a 10 to 12% drop in bond values. That's right, supposedly safe bonds do fall during stock market crashes. Unemployment in excess of 25%. This is how I look at the numbers that was previously discussed and not the published rates. Inflation will hit 11 to 12% per year as the value of the dollar falls fast. The more the US dollar crashes, so goes the real estate market. Gold goes to $2,800 an ounce by the end of 2017. Import prices skyrocket, leading to much lower profits, and at least 1.5 million workers are laid off. Governments will greatly increase income taxes, sales taxes, and property taxes due to a rapidly falling tax base from broke consumers. Municipalities are forced to drastically cut budgets, including pensions, Social Security, food stamps, and unemployment insurance. There will be about 9,000 fewer national park staff working, and some parks will close entirely. Also, there will be 40 fewer national weather and storm tracking offices, and about $10 billion will be cut in cancer and disease research. We will see a drastic rise in the number of juveniles and 20-something adults detained for petty thefts and grand larcenies. All right, now we're in phase 2 of the crash. This phase lasts about 3 years, so by mid-2018, no more money is available for economic stimulus programs and no more funding of overseas wars or peacekeeping. China will also refuse to give our country loans to bail us out, which they did during 2008 and 2009. Social Security will be eliminated for anyone with assets, including homeowners or even those with income. No more unemployment insurance will be funded. Food stamps will continue, but will be reduced to only those in dire need. 22% of the US population are on them now, and of course that figure is going to continue to grow. Homeless shelters will replace many apartment complexes or will be rebuilt within the complexes due to an explosion of folks without housing. Shanty towns will spring up everywhere. Medicaid will be eliminated or combined with Medicare, but services and payments to physicians and providers will be greatly reduced. Many doctors will lose their wealthy lifestyles, and many small hospitals will close their doors or go bankrupt. Moreover, 1 out of every 2 small businesses will go bankrupt. We will see more frequent and stringent audits by the IRS to get tax money from consumers. The lowest tax bracket jumps from 15 to 30% and up to 60% for those left with moderate to high incomes. Sales and property taxes double, and unemployment reaches 35%. Larger factories will avoid strikes by simply shutting down. Small pockets of street violence in major cities will escalate. Think about the past LA riots, and government protests will turn violent. I know this may sound pretty harsh, but there will be a lot of fear and worry going on by late 2018, and I predict that murders of family members and business managers will greatly increase, particularly those managers doing the firing and the layoffs. I mentioned 1.5 million workers will be laid off by the end of phase 1, but by the end of phase 2, you can add another 3 million plus workers off the payrolls by 2019. More killings and attacks of lower level municipal and state politicians will begin, but higher level political leaders such as senators will be well protected from a stepped up security and bodyguard. Politicians will become more reclusive, however, and no matter what they say, no one will like it. Prison populations will overflow into drastically overcrowded conditions, because it will have doubled from just under 1% of the US population in 2016 to over 2% of our population by 2019. There will be an enormous anger and even hatred toward any partisan official. But a chaotic government overthrow will not happen, just high office turnover. One of the few areas that will be hiring in years 4 through 6 of the new depression will be bankruptcy lawyers, private security contractors, drinking bars, and state troopers. Inflation surpasses 25% per year, and the US dollar has now dropped by 1/3 in value. Gold has increased in value to $5,000 an ounce. Okay, phase 3, also lasting about 3 years from 2020 through 2023 of the new Great Depression. Few jobs and higher bankruptcies will lead to little incentives for people to pay mortgages. Almost 3/4 of small businesses closed their doors by the end of 2020. Many banks become insolvent, and almost no market buyers of foreclosed homes. There will be no runs on the bank, however, but there will be major withdrawals, such as what has happened in Europe and the Middle East that we've been seeing lately. Much of the mortgage defaults will be handed over to the government, but they will be stretched so thin that there will be very little share of evictions. Because there will be no one to buy these empty homes or the homes of those evicted, squatters will arrive everywhere to occupy vacant homes. Shanty towns will explode in size, and homeless shelters will too. Even apartment landlords will find it rare to get a good tenant to replace the bad ones. So the good news is that there will be very low evictions within the apartments. Also, no more funding for municipal employee pensions in phase 3, and by the end of 2021, those funds will be pilfered to pay for needed services such as police and fire departments. Life insurance companies will find a lot of great excuses to no longer pay out the full value of the policies that they carry, because their assets depended on stock, bonds, and real estate performing well. Whole life will entirely replace term life insurance policies. Anyone fortunate enough to find work from 2020 to 2023 will be forced down the ladder. $75,000 a year jobs will become $40,000 a year jobs, and no benefits will be given. Up to 50% unemployment in many areas of the US, and at the 7-year point in this Great Depression, over 9 million layoffs will have occurred since 2016. And that's a conservative figure. Because of all the unemployed, street violence and rioting will become commonplace. By the end of 2023, over 3% of the US population will become incarcerated. Many of these individuals will have committed bad crimes in order to have a permanent home and 3 squares. During this phase, there will be no shortage of food to give to the poor. That's some good news, I guess. But up to 75% unemployment for those under age 30 and over age 59. Incidentally, during the Great Recession of 08 and 09, according to the Center of Budget and Policy, over 8.6 million jobs were lost during a 3-year stretch. Universities and colleges will burst with delusionary applicants thinking more education is the answer, but student loans will dry up. The result is that the cost of education will drop by about a half, or the learning centers will close. Professional instructors, such as professors like doctors mentioned earlier, will get a rude awakening in pay adjustments. Some of the businesses that will prosper during years 6 through 9 of this Great Depression will be drinking establishments because of the many lost souls needing to supposedly drown their troubles in liquor. Also auction houses from all the bankrupt businesses and estate sales, and law offices because of the litigations needed by a broke society to somehow get compensated. Also, inflation surpasses 35% during this period, and there will be a big decline in real estate and stock values of about 55 to 60%. Because of no money, few jobs, and no discretionary spending, gourmet restaurants and anything gourmet will become very rare. Many golf and tennis clubs or country clubs will close down, and the purchasing of high-end sports cars or luxury cars will dry up, even for those that remain wealthy. Fast food will do well, but not necessarily prosper. Cheap, high-caloric food will double the obesity problem in the nation during this time period, particularly because of those that are stressed and depressed and eating like crazy. Speaking of depression, psychological pain and mental illness will go way up during this time. Clinical depression will be very common, up to 25% of the population. The price of gold bullion will pinnacle during this period toward the end of year 9 at about $7,000 an ounce. Okay. The final phase. The good news is that after 9 or 10 years of this pain and suffering, the political and economic cycle will begin to turn around. Being that stocks and real estate can be bought at an 80 to 85% discount from 2015, there will be a very slow but steady growth cycle that will begin with regard to asset value increases. Almost all of this will see its genesis from what is left of the few that are still wealthy and have stepped out of the shadows. One of the first signs will be a slight rise in the value of real estate, followed by a slight increase in jobs created. Although our new depression will be moderately better than the Great Depression of the 20s, because our nation is much richer now, the recovery will be very similar to that of the early 40s. It won't look very good the first few years, but a very profound event. Remember the past example of World War II, like a world war, will cause the nation to rally together and cause unity in most aspects of business and finance. I personally feel this rally will come from something we will eventually call World War III, where the US, Great Britain, and a few smaller nations will combine forces to protect Israel from a massive invasion by several communist nations and Islamic militant groups, such as the Al-Qaeda-inspired Islamic State of Iraq, or ISIL. One may call this the Battle of Armageddon. Ladies and gentlemen, no matter how you slice it or even try to avoid it, the proverbial writing is on the wall. We will see a major depression, and it's coming within the next year. Federal Reserve and government policy ammunition, unfortunately, is running out. If you've never been close to God or even consider yourself a non-believer, now would be a very good time to reconsider this grasping for straws. The original story of the biblical writing on the wall is found in the book of Daniel, and it's about King Belshazzar that you might want to digest regarding how he avoided God as well, with a false sense of security through his wine drinking and perversions, throwing caution to the wind. It says, "They drank wine and praised the gods of gold and of silver, bronze and iron, wood and stone. In the same hour the fingers of a man's hand appeared and wrote opposite the lampstand on the plaster wall of the king's palace. And the king saw the part of the hand that wrote. The king's countenance was changed, and his thoughts troubled him, so that the joints of his hips were loosened and his knees knocked against each other. By staying close to your Creator during this next upcoming depression, you will have the greatest possible protection from the plethora of potential negative or even life-threatening situations that can happen. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Now you may be wondering exactly what to invest in during the new Great Depression. Although you need to be a current client to know exactly the investments that I'll protect you with, here are the parameters I use when selecting your investment portfolio. First is beta. I look for investments with a beta of below 0.9. This way I have a good indication that they will be less volatile and less correlated to most stock-related investments. Alpha. Investments with a positive alpha are those that have proven to be resistant in growing over long periods of time and through various economic downturns. It means that the investment has outperformed its benchmark or its peers. My minimum alpha requirement for investment choices is 2.0 or greater. Standard deviation. This is a measurement that shows me how much a stock increases or decreases in value over time. This helps me to gauge what to expect in the future. I personally seek investments with low positive standard deviations over a 3-year time period, and the percentage I use is 15% or lower. Obviously, negative standard deviations of well below even 5% would still not qualify for a client's account. Long-term debt to total assets. Companies with high debt can get into very bad trouble during a rising interest rate environment, which is definitely on our horizon and has already begun. As interest rates rise, it causes bottom line profits to decrease for firms with high leverage, or in other words, firms that use debt to finance their equipment and operations. My balance sheet criteria to include for an investment in your portfolio is a company or security that has a long-term debt to total asset ratio of below 33%. PE ratio. I look for an investment's price to earnings ratio as another way of letting me know if an investment security is overpriced, at par, or underpriced. It's a way of comparing the earnings per share with the market value of those shares. I never use projected or forward PE ratios to determine a good investment because they are only as good as what the analysts have guessed. My business model is to look at trailing or past performance, in particular PE ratios below 15. If it's higher than that, I feel there is too much hype and irrationality built into the price, which means it is overvalued and I stay away from it. Dividends. Plain and simple, none of my clients own any investments that pay an annual dividend of less than 3.2%. I personally feel this provides one more layer of protection in the event of a market correction downward. For example, a client breaks even if their holdings drop by 4%, but they're being paid a dividend of 4%. Okay, to wrap things up, I hope you now realize how important it is for you to understand that you must take care of your investments and your household in preparation for something very big and fairly soon. For everyone that is not a current client but found this broadcast, I sincerely hope it has helped you to understand the reality of a falsely promoted economic recovery that supposedly started in 2010 and the very real and pending economic crash of 2016 that only a few smart economists are discussing right now. If you're serious about avoiding bankruptcy and maybe even prospering financially during such a crisis, you'd be well advised to contact me immediately and maybe even watch this video again before you place another dime or another dollar into savings or into a stock market investment. The information I provided here today is priceless. So if you're a smart consumer that wants to protect their nest egg, then write down my contact information that will soon follow. Please visit the Retirement Portfolio Management website, which I'll show you in a moment. and also select the contact page. See the final seconds of this video for that information. Let's organize your retirement plan at work and at home to prepare for the great crash of late 2015 or early 2016. The writing is on the wall. So don't play games with your future. Send me an email or give me a call so that we can discuss how you're invested and the steps you need to take for achieving greater peace of mind in your golden years.